America, after World War II, became a stellar country worthy of a world superpower. The nation's increased economy and growth became the dream destination for many immigrants around the world. However, the spillage of racial aggression and violence underneath the thin veneer of the, air quotes, American dream was becoming an ever-present and undeniably reality for some. Unfortunately for Black artists in America like Josephine Baker, racial aggression was the everyday norm. Let's continue highlighting Miss Baker's triumphs as well as her struggles. Welcome to Womenz Thoughts. This is the final installment of Miss Baker's story. Without further ado, let's get started. Despite France's appreciation of Josephine Baker's multi-talented performing art, the thought of returning to America to perform made her feel nervous and sick to her stomach. However, Pepito, her boyfriend and manager, managed to convince her to travel to New York City for a one-time performance on Broadway. The show was a revival of Ziegfeld Follies. Unfortunately, Miss Baker's nightmares of coming home and experiencing racial attacks were all too real. Her performance was not received well. In fact, American news critics almost destroyed all the hard work Josephine put into her New York stage performance. In details, the Time magazine referred to her as a, air quotes, Negro wench, whose voice was too thin and dwarf-like. Miss Baker immediately returned to Europe, stung and heartbroken. That experience alone encouraged her to renounce her American citizenship, later becoming a legal French citizen. As if things couldn't get worse, later that year, Josie's faithful manager and beau Pepito, who developed so much love, loyalty, and respect for her, unexpectedly passed away from cancer. By late 1936, Josephine Baker was mourning her beloved love and manager, Giuseppe Apatino, Count Pepito. In fact, Josephine temporarily lost the energy and zeal to continue stage performing. She realized she lost the love of her life, who was seriously invested in her rise to the top. With that said, before leaving America, Pepito and Josephine made some smart business deals with opening and owning clubs in New York called Chez Josephine Baker, meaning the house of Josephine Baker. Fortunately, Josie was not flat broke and had other overseas businesses to hold her over. A slight memory of Pepito's encouraging voice before her New York performance rang in the recesses of her mind. Air quote, and I'm paraphrasing this too. Josephine, they hate you because they can't laugh at you. You always prove them wrong, end quote. Ultimately, with time, Josephine mustered the will to continue doing what she loved, performing her amazing art in front of an audience. It was the dawn of World War II throughout the Western world. America and Europe were entering into another godless world war. In 1940, Germany invaded France, officially starting World War II. Meanwhile, during this time, Josephine Baker was not only an iconic celebrity, she had become a national treasure to France. Josephine's enormous love for her new adopted country created strong patriotic feelings and views. So she quietly signed up for the French counterintelligence program. The program required Josie to take pilot lessons learning how to fly small private planes. In fact, Josephine's cover was perfect. While traveling, no one would suspect the lovely performer to be a spy smuggling information. The espionage program Miss Baker participated in was a successful run. Later, Miss Baker, now a war hero, was awarded the Croix de Guerre and the Resistance Medal by the French military for bravery. After spending a few years on active duty in the French military, Josephine settled down from active war duty. However, a few months later, she signed up for another war effort. Josie thought singing on stage in North Africa in hopes of cheering up the American GIs on active duty was her next calling. Unbeknownst to Josie, this is where she meets her next husband, a French orchestra bandleader named Joe Bouillot. Throughout the 40s, Josephine resided and owned her beloved French countryside fairy tale book manor called Chateau de Milande. Built in the year 1498, the chateau appeared in a dream Josephine had as a child. In 1947, Joe and Josephine got married at her storybook castle. Welcome to the Thought Cafe. While I'm enjoying my coffee cake, let's discuss Miss Baker's French dream home, Chateau de Milande. The castle was built in 1489 by François de Coumont for his beloved wife. The French chateau today is now a historic monument and a tourist attraction. The beautiful castle manicured, lush landscape is gorgeous, with a bountiful fruit, vegetable, and flower garden. And of course, today there are scheduled tours inside the romantic castle. Visitors may experience a sit-and-dine cuisine-style restaurant on the premises as well. So if you're visiting France one day and love architecture, opulence, and a piece of Josephine Baker's memory, come visit the French Chateau de Milande. Let's get back to our story. The thought of returning home to America always caused a feeling of dread for Josephine. Nevertheless, in 1951, Josie was asked to return to America for a performance at a Miami nightclub called the Copa City Club. Consequently, Josephine would agree on one condition: the right to perform in front of an integrated audience. The club owner of the Copa City Club was reluctant to allow integrated audiences. However, the owner did not want to lose the opportunity to showcase a major international superstar like Miss Baker. In contrast, Josephine and her husband were delighted to hear they were finally granted their wishes to perform in front of an integrated audience. As a result, she performed on several occasions. All of them were a blast. Josephine sustained a successful year at the Miami nightclub. In fact, the performances were so good, she extended her stay in America and launched a state-to-state tour. Miss Baker felt amazed and honored because this time, Josie's talent was finally received with love and admiration from her American fans. That same year, in 1951, Josephine and her husband Joe wanted to celebrate their American tour's success and dine at a star-studded popular restaurant called the Stork Club in New York City. The couple ordered their meals and drinks. However, an hour later, they noticed patrons that arrived after them were already being served and dining before them. Josephine quietly gestured to a waitress inquiring about their order. The waitress annoyingly passed her table, ignoring the couple's requests. In attendance that night was Walter Winchell, a radio broadcaster and newspaper columnist who popularized celebrity gossip. Prior to this night, Mr. Winchell gushed and raved about how talented Miss Baker's performance was during the American tour. Therefore, Josephine felt relieved to see Walter there sitting a few tables away. In contrast, Josie could not believe her eyes when she noticed Walter purposely turning a blind eye to the ugly treatment by the restaurant management. In the corner section of the restaurant sat Grace Kelly, a famous Hollywood actress, looking mortified. She also witnessed the social embarrassment. As a result, Josie and Miss Kelly were blown away and quietly stormed out with Joe behind them. The next day, Walter Winchell pushed the proverbial, air quotes, knife in deeper by reporting negative reviews about so-called Miss Baker's bad behavior at the restaurant. Besides Josephine many loves, like performing, her fans, her lovers, France, and on occasions, her birth country, America, she developed the love of nurturing and becoming a mother. Unfortunately, back in the 40s, when Miss Baker was on military assignment as a French spy in North Africa, she fell gravely ill. It was later discovered that Josephine suffered a miscarriage a few years back and was never properly treated by a healthcare professional after her miscarriage. Unbeknownst to Miss Baker, she was diagnosed with an infection so bad, the surgeons at the North African hospital had to perform an emergency hysterectomy on Miss Baker, which later left her barren. Josephine Baker, a woman who appeared to have it all, except her own natural babies, was heartbroken. Grieving, but not for long, Josie and her husband Joe arranged special adoptions for every needy child in every nation she toured. All 12 of them. She lovingly called her beloved children, air quotes, the Rainbow Tribe. By the early 60s, Josephine Baker's personal life was unraveling. Her marriage to her husband, Joe Bouillot, was strained due to financial burdens. As a result, the couple legally called it quits and got a divorce in 1961. So, the Josie heat wave was cooling down. It was a newer generation of entertainers. Therefore, money was flowing less. The couple struggled to feed 12 children and maintain bills was a beast. Let's continue. With all that mentioned, Miss Baker, now a single mother of 12, attempted to keep her life stable, however, fell into financial hardship. In 1968, she was later forced to vacate her beloved Chateau de Milan after a court-ordered eviction. Meanwhile, through all the agony and pain Josephine experienced, she learned it was a blessing to have loyal friends in wealthy spaces. Josephine Baker, always a proud woman, never shared her personal financial situation with anyone. The news of Josie's money woes leaked out through the international press and newspapers. Grace Kelly, now a retired Hollywood actress, married into royalty and residing in Monaco, immediately reached out to Josephine. She offered to financially aid Miss Baker by first providing a luxury villa for her and her 12 children. The retired starlet extended her help by also funding Miss Baker's comeback shows in Paris. Josephine was extremely grateful and promised to repay Miss Kelly back when she was financially able. However, in 1975, Josephine performed a medley of her acts throughout the years at the Bambino Theater in Paris. Josephine appeared on stage looking stunning as a mature performer. She later retired to her hotel room feeling tired and sluggish. Miss Baker then consumed an over-the-counter pain medicine for a slight headache. She eventually closed her eyes to rest, to never wake up for the next day's performance. Sadly, Josephine Baker passed away in her sleep at the age of 68 from a stroke. Despite all the challenges as a Black artist in America, Josephine Baker's support of marginalized people was not unnoticed. In the year 1949, the superstar was awarded Woman of the Year by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, aka NAACP. The following year, in 1951, the NAACP declared May 20th as Josephine Baker Day. In addition, Miss Baker was also awarded and praised by the French military. The French arranged an extravagant parade with fans tossing roses at the star while she rode on the back of a topless car. And in 2021, presently, Josephine Baker was honored by the French with a celebration induction ceremony into the Pantheon. Josephine Baker was given a Queen's farewell. In brief, Miss Baker became a practicing Catholic later in life, thereupon having an enormous Catholic service at the L'Église La Magdalene. Notably, 20,000 mourners attended to witness French history. In fact, Miss Baker was the first and only American-born woman to receive a French military honor ceremony. Besides the French forever celebrating her, the iconic star's native home back in America honored and celebrated her life as well. Josephine Baker was a trailblazer and changed the face of entertainment worldwide, especially for women. She has influenced a plethora of future entertainers desiring the chance to mirror her amazing talent and spirit. Please go stream the HBO movie titled The Josephine Baker Story, starring Lynn Whitfield, who did a phenomenal job, I must add. Celebrities influenced by Miss Baker's life and body of work were Diana Ross, Madonna, Beyonce, Janelle Monáe, and Rihanna. These entertainers, iconic and or popular in their own right, praised the historic legacy of this international superstar. And for that, here are your flowers, Miss Josephine Baker. Thank you for viewing the last installment of the 3-part Josephine Baker story. Honestly, I had so many glitches with my editing app. However, I prevailed and managed to upload the 3-part series. I have a few words and thoughts for the iconic Miss Josephine Baker. She was uber talented, charismatic, and daring. Here's the thing. Miss Baker's humble beginnings was as an impoverished child from St. Louis, Missouri, who later became a beloved, solid, historic, international legend. Wow, she was truly phenomenal. What were your thoughts on today's story? Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so when I upload another video, you will be notified. As always, because everyone has a story. Ciao.